Hello class, my name is Mr. George Gitonga from the Institute of Security Studies, Justice and Ethics under the School of Social Sciences. Today we'll be looking at BJS 4233, Forensic Accounting. So our class today will cover litigation support. So when you talk about litigation support, we bring about the element of auditing. So when you're doing maybe auditing the books of a certain company, there may be indications of fraud. So the main question we ask ourselves here, when is the right time? Whether the auditor is internal or external. When should they consider to call in a forensic accounting investigator? So that is the main gist of this chapter. So sometimes the auditor may wait for such a long period of time before they think it's time to call the forensic accounting investigator. But sometimes also the auditor may feel that there's a bias in that statement. So what you are trying to do here is trying to find a balance between the auditor and the forensic accounting investigator. So to try to establish when is the truly right time to bring this forensic accounting investigator into the picture. So of course we must have a sufficient reason or enough predication for the auditor to call in the forensic accounting investigator. So sometimes different auditors have their own different styles. So for some time, when there's a very small suspicion of fraud, this auditor will go ahead and call in the forensic investigator. So sometimes the way forward is to try to consult early and often between the auditor and the forensic accounting investigator. So there are a few points you have to look at. So the first point is the auditor. Nowadays, auditors are not forensic accounting investigator. So sometimes people may think that this auditor has also been trained to be, has the necessary skills in order to be a forensic accounting investigator, but that is not the case. Because whatever auditors study, it has nothing to do with investigation of fraud. Yes, they may be able to detect fraud, but investigation is not part of the skill set that they are taught in whatever they do. So this is one assumption that normally should be avoided. Not everyone who's an auditor can also become a good forensic accounting investigator. Then also you can say that auditors are not authenticators. So in our previous class, we spoke about question document analysis. So now this auditor, it is not their responsibility, for example, if a check has been forged or there's another counterfeit document to authenticate whether this document is correct or not. Because any fraudster who's good at their job, they can be able to access a color printer and as a result even falsify a paper trail that will even deceive the best auditor in the business. So in this case is when you have to call in a forensic accounting investigator. So audit, sometimes you have to go through so many documents. So in their training of being auditors, they have not been taught how can you tell that somebody has doctored this document and so on. So the standards they have, they are not part of this authentication of documents. But they must have enough professional skepticism to tell that there's a chance that this document is fraudulent also. So we have an illustration here. So this is the auditor. So these red flags, these are things that may indicate that fraud has occurred. So these, when you have these red flags, it indicates that there's a fraud here that has not been detected. Then after that, you have the suspicion of fraud. So now it is up to the forensic accountant to, first of all, these suspicions that the auditor has, he first of all has to investigate these suspicions. If you feel that these suspicions hold water, they can now seek to either prove or disprove these allegations. So if these allegations can be proved, they can now continue with the litigation or the taking these people responsible for the fraud to court, so that they can prosecute or even terminate the case. If they feel there is not enough evidence to these allegations, they can terminate this case. Then also, auditors, the exposure to fraud is very limited. So in order to be an effective investigator, you must always be continuously exposed to fraud. So the more fraud you are exposed to, it increases your investigative experience. So this will give you a sixth sense. So you're able to sense whenever more fraud occurs. So now this means that, for example, they must conduct interviews. So sometimes they may hear such comments about somebody having a good work ethic and otherwise. But the thing about fraudsters, they want to gain your confidence first. And then as an auditor, due to your limited exposure to fraud, you may not be able to understand the fraud because of having too much confidence in somebody. Then also, auditors are not guarantors. So it is not their work to guarantee documents. So essentially, the auditor is a watchdog. So they just are seeing how things are going, but not a bloodhound. A bloodhound looks for negative things. So their work is just to watch over things to make sure that they are going okay. Then also, the public, especially investors, they have an interest. So if they see that, they look that sometimes fraud is not being detected, they become very frustrated. So now this means that the public is very interested in influencing the decisions. Then also another issue is that audits have been very predictable. So if a company, if you've been doing auditing the same way, day in, day out, this company will understand your routine and now such that they'll be able to circumvent whichever mechanisms you are doing. So the treatment to this is try to come up with some unpredictability in your auditing such that it will be easier to detect fraud when committed also. Then we can look at the potential trigger points of fraud. So this is what shows that probably there's some fraud going on in the organization. So for example, if there is an anonymous allegation, so anonymous is where somebody does not reveal themselves. So this can either be through a letter or an email or even a hotline or an anonymous call. So this is a whistleblower. They really have to be taken care of, otherwise they shall be victimized. So for example, now this whistleblower has already told the company, they've made an allegation, but now this company dilly-dallies. So as a result, they'll make a phone call to a third party, maybe, for example, those in charge of shares. So now the problem with this person being exposed, their reputation may be ruined. So it is very important to protect these people. Then also sometimes a high-ranking official may resign, maybe due to some illegal activities. So now, for example, a CEO, maybe after an investigation has been found that some corruption was going on, so maybe as a result, they'll be forced to resign their position. Then also, a client may have been identified as a target by a law enforcement agency. So maybe a client of this company has been suspected of engaging in fraud. So in this case, it means that the auditor must not wait for the investigation to end, because it will take so long that eventually things may disappear in that period. Then also, a client who has received a subpoena. So a subpoena is a court order or an order to appear before court. So maybe from the police, or maybe even this regulatory agency. So having been called to court may imply that the auditor has noticed something wrong and forwarded his findings. So now that this person will be called to court. Then also, sometimes the auditor may believe that there was intentionally misleading information provided by the client, or maybe even some documents were altered before being presented to the auditor, or even they were intentionally withheld. So sometimes the auditor may confront the company to know who, because all of this is deception. So it is up to him to try to establish this deception. When somebody is found, they'll tend to apologize and say that there's an misunderstanding. But after time, the auditor will understand that he was deceived along the way. Then you also have cases that a client was embezzled, and the suspect is no longer in the company. So that also raises red flags. Then also there is the case of fictitious vendors. So maybe a fictitious vendor is somebody who may not really exist. But this is where fraud happens, because you say you received products from somebody and paid them, but in the real sense, that person does not exist. Then also we have where you may indicate improper accounting of revenue or expenses. Maybe you record the sales before they are completed, or even goods are shipped before the sale is finalized, or even you record revenue and the customer is still owed money. So it means that you still owe him a refund. So all these are false revenues that the auditor will establish in his audit. Then you still have more. We still have supplier refunds recorded as revenue. So this refund, instead of going out, it's shown as if it is money still coming in. Then also bill and hold issues, when you record discounts as income, and also expenses are being shifted into a future time, and also when you shift expenses into the future. So this may indicate fraud, even though they're not necessarily fraudulent. So it is up to the auditor to know what is right and what is wrong. So also other red flags we have are transactions not being recorded in completion or even in the correct time. And also when a manager works below the authority level, transactions are not supported There's no evidence of employee success. And also some of the financial records are not reconciled. Then you also have some unusual transactions. Maybe their nature is unusual, the volume is more than usual, or even the complexity, even sometimes the timing is also suspicious. Then also they're not recording according to what the manager expects. And also sometimes long-standing accounts are still receiving balances. So we still have many more missing documents. Also some discrepancies in the records of the company, and also transactions that are unusual, and also contractual agreements that are not according to the purpose of the business. So all these denying access to the records. Maybe the auditor wants to access all your records, but you deny them. So that is a red flag for fraud. Also, time pressures being unreasonable. So it means that you're trying to hiding something. Even maybe the tips. The auditor is being given tips about the alleged fraud. And also management may be domineering. So the main thing is that auditors and the forensic accounting investigators, it is important that they collaborate. So some do it well, some are unable to. So you have a case scenario here. You also have cases of anonymous letters. So the investigator knows that there could be some truth in it, so they cannot try to ignore it. So sometimes another challenge could be the cost. So some may look at the cost instead of the benefit at the end of the day. So you have a case in point here. So now these are case studies on the relationship between the forensic accounting investigator and the auditor. So we also have issues of reliance. So now it is relying on maybe the audit committee and the litigation or the investigation. So now at the end of the day, when you decide to call in the forensic investigator, it is just a judgment call. You as the auditor, what does your mind tell you? So now the benefits are being consulted with so that you can be able to establish a better rapport between the two. So the more accountants you have, the more it is better to be able to deter the fraud. So that is the end of our lesson. Thank you for your time.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.